She died on a Tuesday in October. Joan Nidiffer, 6 years old, had a sore throat. Her mother did what any mother would do. She took her to the doctor. The doctor did what any doctor would do. He prescribed medicine, raspberry-flavored syrup, safe for children, except it wasn't safe. And by the time anyone realized what was in that bottle, 107 people were dead. Most of them were children. By the end of this video, you will never look at a prescription bottle the same way again. Because what you're about to hear is the reason, the only reason, that every drug you've ever taken had to be tested before it could kill you. Before 1938, that wasn't required. A pharmaceutical company could mix anything into a bottle, call it medicine, and sell it to your children. And one company did exactly that. This is the story of elixir sulfanilamide, and this is why your medicine has warning labels written in blood. Tulsa, Oklahoma, September 1937. The world is still recovering from the Great Depression. Dust storms have turned farmland into wasteland. Money is scarce. Medicine is scarcer. When your child gets sick, you pray, because antibiotics don't exist yet. Penicillin is still a decade away from mass production. A simple infection can kill. Sulfanilamide was a miracle. Discovered in 1932, it was one of the first drugs that could actually stop bacterial infections. It saved lives. Strep throat, scarlet fever, pneumonia. Things that used to kill children, now they could be cured. But there was a problem. Sulfanilamide only came in pill and powder form, and children couldn't swallow pills. Parents were crushing tablets into water, mixing powder into milk. It tasted horrible. Kids refused it. Doctors needed a liquid version desperately. The demand was enormous. The S.E. Massengill Company of Bristol, Tennessee saw an opportunity. If they could make liquid sulfanilamide, something that tasted good, something children would actually swallow, they could dominate the market. They assigned their chief chemist to the project. His name was Harold Cole Watkins. He had worked for the company for years. He was respected. He was trusted. He was about to kill 107 people. Harold Cole Watkins was 58 years old in 1937. He had been a chemist for over 30 years. He had worked for the S.E. Massengill Company since 1933. He was good at his job. He had created several successful pharmaceutical formulations for the company. He was trusted. When the company needed a liquid sulfanilamide, they gave the project to Watkins. He understood the problem immediately. Sulfanilamide didn't dissolve in water. It didn't dissolve in alcohol. He needed a solvent, something that could carry the drug in liquid form, something that tasted sweet enough to mask the bitter sulfanilamide, something cheap to manufacture so the company could maximize profit. He spent weeks testing different solvents in his laboratory. He tried various alcohols. He tried glycerin. Nothing worked the way he needed. Then he tried diethylene glycol. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Diethylene glycol is the main ingredient in antifreeze. It's what you pour into your car radiator in winter to keep the engine from freezing. In 1937, it had another use. It was a common industrial solvent used in manufacturing processes across dozens of industries. Sweet tasting, thick consistency, cheap to produce, and it dissolved sulfanilamide perfectly. Harold Watkins had found his solution. Here's what he didn't know, or didn't bother to find out. Diethylene glycol destroys your kidneys. It shuts down your liver. It kills you slowly, painfully, and there is no antidote. The toxicity of diethylene glycol had been documented in scientific literature since 1930. Multiple studies existed. Medical journals had published case reports of industrial poisoning. A chemist working for a pharmaceutical company, especially one developing a product for human consumption, should have known this. Should have checked, should have tested. But Harold Watkins either never checked the medical literature or he checked and didn't care. We'll never know which. What we do know is this. He mixed his formula without testing it for safety. Sulfanilamide powder, diethylene glycol, raspberry flavoring to make it taste good for children, water to adjust consistency. He tested the mixture for appearance. Did it look like medicine? Yes. He tested it for fragrance. Did it smell pleasant? Yes. He tested it for flavor. Would children drink it? Yes. He never tested it on a single animal. He never tested it on a single human. He never consulted toxicology references. He never asked if diethylene glycol was safe for human consumption. He just mixed it, bottled it, and told the company it was ready. It passed every test he performed, because he only tested if it would sell, not if it would kill. In September 1937, the S.E. Massengill Company shipped 633 gallons of elixir sulfanilamide to pharmacies, hospitals, and doctors across 15 states. The label said elixir sulfanilamide for the treatment of infections. Dose, 1 to 3 teaspoonfuls every 4 hours. The label did not say this product has not been tested for safety, because in 1937, that disclosure wasn't required. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, had been created in 1906, but its powers were almost non-existent. A drug company could put anything in a bottle and sell it as medicine. The FDA could only act if the label was fraudulent. If you called poison medicine and people died, that was a tragedy. If you called poison soap and people died, that was a crime. This is the loophole that killed Joan Nidiffer. October 11th, 1937, Tulsa, Oklahoma. 6-year-old Joan Nidiffer had a sore throat. Not serious, just a childhood illness that every parent knows. A scratchy throat, mild fever, nothing unusual. Her mother, Mays Nidiffer, took her to see Dr. Archie Calhoun, their family physician. He examined Joan and diagnosed strep throat, common, treatable. He prescribed the new liquid sulfanilamide everyone was talking about, the miracle drug in liquid form. Finally, something children could actually take. 1 teaspoon, 3 times a day. Mays bought the bottle from Porter's Pharmacy that afternoon. The pharmacist handed it to her with a smile. Safe for children, he assured her. The syrup was dark red, almost burgundy. It smelled like raspberries. Sweet, pleasant. Joan took her first dose at dinner that evening, October 11th, at 6:30 in the evening. She didn't complain about the taste. She actually smiled. It tasted like candy. Within 8 hours, something was wrong. Joan stopped urinating completely. Her mother noticed first. Joan hadn't used the bathroom since dinner. By midnight, Joan was clutching her stomach. By 2 in the morning, she was vomiting continuously. Everything she ate, everything she drank, just kept coming back up. Her skin started turning gray. Her body began to swell. Her face puffed up. Her abdomen distended. Dr. Calhoun came to the house at dawn on October 12th. He had seen strep throat 1,000 times in 30 years of practice. He had never seen this. This wasn't strep. This was something else, something terrible. He called an ambulance. Joan was admitted to Tulsa General Hospital at 9 in the morning. The doctors ran tests. Blood work showed her kidneys were failing, not slowing down, failing completely, shutting down. By October 13th, Joan Nidiffer was in a coma. Her kidneys had stopped functioning entirely. Toxins were building up in her blood. Her liver was failing. Her brain was swelling. There was nothing the doctors could do. No dialysis existed in 1937. No way to filter her blood. No way to save her. By October 15th, at 3:20 in the afternoon, Joan Nidiffer was dead. 4 days after taking her first dose of medicine. She was 6 years old. She wasn't the first. She wasn't the last. Across the South, children were dying the exact same way. In East St. Louis, Illinois, a doctor named William Decker prescribed elixir sulfanilamide to 13 patients in early October. All 13 developed the same symptoms, stopped urinating, started vomiting, turned gray, swelled up, died. 13 people in 1 week. Dr. Decker couldn't understand what was happening. He had used sulfanilamide powder for months. It worked. It saved lives. Why was the liquid version killing everyone? In Mississippi, Dr. A.S. Calhoun, no relation to Joan's doctor, prescribed elixir sulfanilamide to 8 patients with minor infections. 6 of them died within a week. A mother and her 2 children, all dead from the same bottle. An elderly man with a mild skin infection, dead in 5 days. The pattern was always the same. Kidneys failed first, complete shutdown within 48 hours. Then the liver failed. Then toxins overwhelmed the brain. Then death. The dying took between 2 and 9 days, depending on how much they took. Some victims were children with sore throats, taking teaspoons. Some were adults with serious infections, taking tablespoons. All of them thought they were taking medicine. All of them were taking poison. The American Medical Association received the first warning on October 11th, the same day Joan took her first dose. Dr. James Stevenson in Tulsa sent a telegram to the AMA headquarters in Chicago. Unusual number of deaths following elixir sulfanilamide, suspect acute poisoning, investigating, request immediate assistance. The AMA contacted the FDA in Washington immediately. The FDA sent investigators to Tulsa within hours. What they found terrified them. The FDA had no authority to recall a drug in 1937. Read that again. They had no authority to stop distribution. They couldn't force pharmacies to pull the product from shelves. They couldn't order the S.E. Massengill Company to stop shipping. They couldn't tell doctors not to prescribe it. All they could do was inspect the label for fraud. If the label wasn't fraudulent, their hands were completely tied. But there was one thing the FDA could do, one loophole they could exploit. They could send field inspectors to track down every single bottle, one by one, and beg doctors and pharmacists not to prescribe or sell it, not order them, not compel them, beg them. On October 18, 1937, FDA Commissioner Walter Campbell issued an emergency internal order that became legendary in FDA history. Find every bottle of elixir sulfanilamide in America. Find it before someone else dies. Do whatever it takes. 239 inspectors were deployed across 15 states overnight. They abandoned every other case they were working on. They worked 20-hour days, 7 days a week. They drove through rainstorms to reach rural doctors in isolated towns. They knocked on pharmacy doors at midnight. They confiscated bottles from hospital supply closets. They literally ran through train stations trying to intercept shipments before they reached their destinations. They checked manifests. They bribed railroad workers for information. They called ahead to small-town pharmacists, begging them not to open packages from the S.E. Massengill Company. Inspector Joe Richardson in South Carolina drove 400 miles in one day, hitting every pharmacy in his territory. Inspector Francis Kelsey, not yet the famous doctor but a field worker, went door to door in rural Georgia asking if anyone had bought the medicine. They worked through the night. They skipped meals. They slept in their cars. And people kept dying. Every day the death toll climbed. Every day another telegram arrived at FDA headquarters. Another death, another child, another adult, another family destroyed. By November 1937, the death toll had reached 60, then 70, then 85. The inspectors were exhausted. Some of them broke down crying when they arrived too late, when they found a bottle in a home where someone had already died. They were racing against time and distribution networks, and they were losing. The S.E. Massengill Company had shipped 633 gallons. That's approximately 10,000 individual doses. The FDA had to find every single one, every bottle, every pharmacy, every doctor's office, every hospital, every home. It was impossible, but they tried anyway. Joan Nidiffer, Joan's mother, received a visit from an FDA inspector on October 20th, 5 days after her daughter died. The inspector asked for the bottle. Mays had thrown it away in grief and rage. The inspector searched her trash. He found it. He sent it to the FDA laboratory in Washington. The chemists ran tests. They identified diethylene glycol within 48 hours. This is the part that was buried in official reports for decades. The S.E. Massengill Company knew what diethylene glycol was. Their purchasing records showed they bought it from a chemical supplier. The invoice listed its uses. One of those uses was automotive antifreeze. The company's own records proved they knew they were putting antifreeze into children's medicine. Dr. Samuel Evans Massengill, the company president, was informed of the deaths on October 14th. His response was not an apology. His response was a press release. Quote, "My chemists and I deeply regret the fatal results, but there was no error in the manufacture of the product. We have been supplying legitimate professional demand and not once could have foreseen the unlooked-for results. I do not feel that there was any responsibility on our part." End quote. No responsibility. 107 people were dead. 71 of them were children, and the company president said it wasn't his fault because he didn't foresee that poison would kill people. Harold Cole Watkins, the chemist who created the formula, never stood trial for murder. He couldn't. Because in 1937, killing people with untested medicine wasn't a crime. The only law the S.E. Massengill Company had broken was mislabeling. They called the product an elixir. In pharmaceutical terminology, an elixir must contain alcohol. Elixir sulfanilamide contained no alcohol. That was the crime, not the 107 deaths, the mislabeling. The company was fined $26,000. That's $243 per death. In January 1938, Harold Watkins was found dead in his home in Bristol, Tennessee. The official report said suicide. He left no note. Some historians believe he couldn't live with what he had done. Others believe the company wanted him silenced. We'll never know. What we do know is this: Harold Watkins took the formula to his grave, and the S.E. Massengill Company never admitted wrongdoing. But there was someone who refused to let this be forgotten. Her name was Frances Oldham Kelsey. In 1937, she was a 23-year-old pharmacology student at the University of Chicago. She had just started working with a professor studying drug toxicity. When the elixir sulfanilamide disaster broke nationwide, her professor assigned her a research project: investigate exactly how diethylene glycol kills the human body. Frances Kelsey spent 2 years studying the case. She dissected the FDA reports. She read the autopsy files. She learned that diethylene glycol metabolizes into oxalic acid, which crystallizes in the kidneys like shards of glass. She learned that the children died in agony. She learned that it was completely preventable. She learned that pharmaceutical companies could not be trusted to police themselves. And she remembered. 23 years later, in 1960, Dr. Frances Oldham Kelsey would be working as an FDA medical reviewer. A pharmaceutical company would submit a new drug application for a morning sickness medication called thalidomide. The company would pressure her to approve it quickly. Every other country had already approved it, but Frances Kelsey would remember elixir sulfanilamide. She would demand more safety testing. She would refuse approval. And because of that refusal, thalidomide, a drug that caused catastrophic birth defects across Europe, was never sold in the United States. 10,000 children in Europe were born with severe limb deformities. In America, the number was 17, all from clinical trials before Kelsey blocked approval. Frances Kelsey saved an entire generation of American children, and it started with the 107 people who died from raspberry-flavored poison in 1937. June 25, 1938. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act into law. For the first time in American history, pharmaceutical companies were required to prove their drugs were safe before selling them. Not effective. That requirement would come later in 1962, but safe. The law created the new drug application process. Every new drug had to be tested. Animal studies, toxicity studies, human clinical trials, documentation submitted to the FDA for review, approval required before a single pill could be sold to the public. Because of Joan Nidiffer and the 106 others who died with her, every medication you have ever taken has been tested for safety. The vitamin you took this morning, the antibiotic your doctor prescribed last month, the painkiller in your medicine cabinet right now, all of them had to prove they wouldn't kill you before they were allowed to reach your hands. The S.E. Massengill Company survived. They paid their fine of $26,000 and continued manufacturing pharmaceuticals. They never publicly apologized. They never compensated the families beyond what courts ordered. The company operated under that name until 1972, when it was acquired by another pharmaceutical firm. Dr. Samuel Massengill, the president who said he felt no responsibility, died in 1958 at the age of 89. He died wealthy. He died comfortable. He died having never admitted that his company killed 107 people for profit. Harold Watkins died alone in 1938. Whether by his own hand or someone else's, we'll never know. But his death changed nothing. The damage was already done. Joan Nidiffer, Joan's mother, received no compensation from the company for years. She had to sue. In 1939, she was awarded damages in civil court. The amount was never publicly disclosed. Whatever it was, it couldn't bring back her 6-year-old daughter. May spent the rest of her life advocating for drug safety laws. She testified before Congress. She wrote letters to newspapers. She made sure people knew Joan's name. She died in 1982. By then, the law her daughter's death had created had saved millions of lives. Today, when you pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, you see warnings, you see side effects listed, you see clinical trial data, you see FDA approval stamps. You see all of this because Joan Nidiffer died from raspberry-flavored antifreeze in 1937, because 71 children took medicine that was never tested, because parents trusted doctors who trusted pharmaceutical companies who lied. Every warning label on every medication you've ever taken exists, because the S.E. Massengill Company decided profit was more important than testing. Every FDA approval process exists because Harold Watkins mixed industrial solvent into children's medicine. Every drug safety regulation exists because 107 people died in agony while a company president said he felt no responsibility. The next time you read a warning label on medication, remember this. Someone died so you could read those words. Someone's child took that medicine first, without warnings, without testing, without any way to know it was poison. The label isn't there to annoy you. It's there because a 6-year-old girl named Joan Nidiffer trusted her doctor, and her doctor trusted a pharmaceutical company, and that pharmaceutical company killed her. The law is written in her blood. Every safety regulation you see exists because someone bled for it. Most of the time, we don't know their names. Most of the time, the company that killed them made sure we'd forget, but not Joan Nidiffer, not the 71 children who died with her, not the 107 people who took medicine that was never tested. They didn't die for nothing. They died so you wouldn't have to.